Okay, so here is a quick little video of how I use resin on my rocks to finish them. Couple little tips too that I learned through the years of watching YouTube videos of people. If you happen to have a rock that is really bumpy, but it's a good shaped rock, you can resin it before you paint it, and I did that on this rock. So as you can see, like the paint and then how the rock is shiny. So what I did is when I was finishing some other rocks, I just put some of these rocks that were a little bit too bumpy to get smooth lines, and I added resin on them, and I was kind of sloppy about it. You can be. You'd see how it pools a little bit at the bottom, but the back I didn't care about. So then once it dries, you can paint on it and it gives you a really smooth finish. Excuse me, which I like. So, but once it's painted, then you want to resin it again. So I'll show you how I do that. This one has not been finished at all. It was a smooth rock to begin with. So I just painted on it and then we'll resin that. So what I do is I'm using resin that I got on Amazon, and I've had good luck with it. And then I have an old set of measuring spoons that I use multiple times. And all the resin is crusty and dry and hard on it. Eventually I'll probably have to get a new set, but I don't need that much resin for these two little rocks. So what I would probably suggest is a half a teaspoon, maybe 1 teaspoon would be a little bit too much of each of the resin, A and B. And you put it into a little cup equally. I'm going to use a tad bit more only because I'm going to resin a couple more rocks. So I'm going to use a half of a tablespoon of each. But that's probably too much just for these two little rocks. And resin is not exactly cheap, so you probably want to not waste as much as you can. So evenly. Here's the first one. And you want to use a clean paintbrush. Obviously anything that you have left on your paintbrush is going to tint the color of your resin. And then I just take a paper towel and wipe out that extra resin to avoid it losing its shape. And then I can reuse the same plastic spoons again. So once you have your resin, you can either use a little popsicle stick, which I think came with my set, or you can just use your paintbrush, but you want to mix it up really well. And I want to say the instructions said to let it rest for a few minutes. I don't think I usually do that. I think I just kind of jump right into it. Maybe I mix it for a few minutes and then just get into things. We'll let that sit just for a minute. But some of the tools that I use is I've got a old cookie tray underneath here and some parchment paper just to protect it. I use a little flamethrower to work out the bubbles, which works really good. I don't always use it, but if you do get bubbles in your resin, to have a little bit of a flame on it does help. Or if you don't have something like that at your house, you can just use a straw and blow air onto your rocks and the bubbles will pop. And you can do that periodically, every couple minutes or so, just until the resin starts to really harden up. If you see bubbles, you can just blow on it. Just be aware that if moisture comes through the straw, you can spit on your rocks. You don't want that. It'll, so make sure you're not spitty, and then you'll be fine with getting the bubbles out of that. But we'll show you the process here. So this, like I said, is probably way too much resin, but I am doing a second coat on a rather big rock here. And the reason for the second coat is because there are some bubbles. You can see where the light kind of bends on that dot there. I'm gonna do a second coat to get rid of some of those on this big piece. So, not the end of the world if you don't get the first coat right. All right, so the first thing I do is I have gloves on, and I take my little paintbrush and I just do a little bit of resin on the back and I rub it in. And this helps me avoid pooling, but it also helps me to get a nice even coat on the back that looks clean. And because it is so thin, when you put it onto the parchment paper and it dries, it doesn't stick. You're not peeling it all off. You can just take it off, and then you've got that nice little shiny coat. I'm going to do that on this one too here. And you just do the whole rock in a thin coat and set it down. So you don't need that much resin. And then all you do is you paint a layer on your rock. It's thin. It's not something that you need to dump on and let it drip off. I don't have anything dripping, but if I did overdo it a little bit, as it dries, you can just take your brush and wipe it around, and that dripping or pooling will blend in. So now I'm going to do this one. It's just a thin, and this is plenty to give you that nice glassy shine. And it's not dripping or pooling at all. And you can see all those little bubbles that are in there. If you don't do anything with it, they will stay. Some of them will go away, but they'll stay. Some of them will also show up in your finished piece, and we don't want that. So that's all the resin that I put on. And then to get rid of some of those bubbles, I use my little flame torch. And I just give it a quick flame. and those bubbles pop. You don't want to hold the flame on there. You will burn your rock and turn it colors. But you can see, I don't know if you can see, but I can see some of those bubbles going away. Try not to burn your house down when you do that. If you don't have that, you can use a straw and just blow